Life can be fast-paced, strenuous, and flat-out overwhelming. Life transitions and taboo topics can make it hard to catch your breath. Welcome to Breathe, a podcast that enables you to slow down, get your bearings, and engage in real conversations where no topic is off limits. Breathe is presented by Breath of Life, hosted by David Person and speaker-director Pastor Debleaire Snell.
Welcome to Breathe. I'm David Person, and it is good to be with you as always with my man, Pastor Debleaire Snell.
Hey,
what's
sir.
up, Pastor? How you doing?
I'm good. It's another wonderful fall Monday. Glad to be in the house with you, David. And we got some special guests today that's going to bring some glow and wisdom and perspective to this heavy conversation.
That's right. We're welcoming back Sister Danita Jones. How are you?
Listen, still jealous about the shirts.
Yeah.
I have to point that out. I think I said it in the last podcast.
You did.
But for people listening, they're like, what is she talking about? Go to the YouTube
Yeah.
and see why I'm upset that everybody doesn't get
You
shirts.
just gave away your age when you called it the
YouTube. I did, right?
YouTube.
The YouTube. Go to the YouTube.
Yeah,
Which
you
is
told on
near
yourself.
the Facebook.
Right, the
the
Facebook.
The
Yeah.
Instagram.
Listen,
The
that is how
Instagram.
you know. Right, the TikTok.
Yeah.
Right.
And we are welcoming, I think for the first time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Sister Karlecia Swann, how
Yes.
are you?
I'm well. How are you?
We're glad to have you here. And you are a graduate of Oakwood University, Alabama A&M University. You are an entrepreneur. I think your company is First Woman Empowerment.
First
is that
Lady
right?
Empowerment.
First Lady
Yes.
Empowerment.
Yeah.
All right. Tell
That's
us
one of them.
one of your companies. Okay.
Right.
Flexing.
There's a list.
Flexing. What's tell us about First Lady Empowerment.
So First Lady Empowerment is a nonprofit that seeks to empower young girls, young adolescent girls and women in the realm of self-esteem, building, and encouraging them to look within, to empower themselves to be the best they can be.
Beautiful, beautiful. You are a what I would call a social entrepreneur because you're in the nonprofit arena, but it's still entrepreneurial.
Yes,
So it's a business. That's
Yes,
very good.
for sure.
Very good.
Also, under that, we have a group home component where my brother and I own a group home in the Alabama area.
Okay.
And that's for individuals with intellectual disabilities.
Beautiful. Well,
I love that.
We love entrepreneurship here.
We do.
I think all of us have our fingers in that
something.
arena.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's good. We love that. Well, today we're talking about a topic that we need.
You know it's bad when he starts chuckling.
Pastor Snell and I definitely wanted to have a female perspective on this. Talking about type and can you modify your type? Meaning, when you talk about dating and potential marriage and marriage, we all have preferences. We all have a type of person or maybe a set of criteria we want to see in a person that we gravitate to. And so we're calling that your type. The question is, can you modify your type? Should we even be talking about modifying our type? What's wrong with having a type and keeping it like that?
Yeah. No, I don't think that we're suggesting that there is an evil, in having a preference or a type.
Right.
I just think at the end of the day, each and every one of us are, I don't think we don't come from an assembly line. So I think that we are born with perspectives and views and as the adage is, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So what is beautiful and attractive and draws in one person, in some ways is going to repel or push in a different direction somewhere else. And so I don't think we're saying it's bad or it's evil. I think it's just, I don't think it's immoral. I think it's amoral. I don't think it has a moral quality to it. I just think it's something that everybody, for some reason or the other, develops over time. And I think we can, in our dialogue, get into some of those reasons.
Sister Swann,
Yes.
do you have a type?
Do I have a type?
Do you have a type?
Listen,
Brothers, y'all listen.
You're right.
You may fit the bill. I don't know. Let's see.
yes and no.
Oh.
So I think types should change if you have one. I know when I was like maybe in high school, there was a type that I had, and it was very superficial.
Bad boys, what you gonna do?
Listen, that might still be.
You're right.
But no.
Oh, Lord.
No, but your type should change as you evolve, as you grow, mature spiritually and regularly mature. Your type should grow, and so I think it's okay to have a type, but you really have to you have to decide that the type that you're attracting or that you want is desirable for the kingdom. Mm-hmm. Because I believe that once you do link up with someone, if your goal is to marry, that your marriage should help you get to the kingdom. Mm-hmm. So if the person you've chosen has a type that's not going to lend those type of qualities, then you may need to reassess.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now I know you haven't been in the dating game for years and years and years.
I have not.
But when you were, did you have a type?
Yes. But I mean, I don't think I think you're going to be very hard pressed to find a woman that doesn't have a type, right? Like she said, when you're younger, it's the Denzel Washingtons and the, like that back in the 80s and 90s, it's the Wesley Snipes and the,
she's dating.
Yeah. We're all aging ourselves.
Listen, I will call out everybody's age at the table and y'all agreed with me. You're like, oh yeah. So we know how old y'all are. I wrote a book called The 90-Day Plan, and in it I make women list 20 qualities that they need in order to be happy in a man. But I purposely make it so that you can't necessarily list, like you get a couple of physical qualities, but the purpose of it is to figure out the more foundational type things that are lasting. So like if I'm going to buy a house and the house looks incredible. Oh, this is a great story. So when me and #boyfriend bought a house,
#boyfriend being your husband.
My husband, yes, my husband of 20 plus years.
Yes.
When me and #boyfriend, when we bought our house, we bought a house that had been in foreclosure. Incredible blessing, right? It was one of those gems that you find. And we walked in, and the house was gorgeous on the inside. It had everything that I had on my list that I wanted. What we didn't know at the time, which we're finding out now because we've lived there for about 10 years, I believe, is that because the bank was trying to get rid of the house, there was some things that they covered up with paint and flooring.
Oh, yeah.
So that when we walked in, that joint was gorgeous. But us being new homeowners, we didn't look for stuff like, hey, if you tap this right here, the floor paneling actually comes up to reveal that we don't have something underneath. Or if you tap this right here, you realize that there's no base coat. They just painted over drywall. You see what I'm saying? And what happens is that when you are looking for a type, you have to make sure that the foundation underneath what the superficial
Speak on it, sis.
Is better, because when it starts to age and settle and the quirks and the cracks start to be revealed, you realize ultimately that you have a more expensive problem on your hands later on down the line, just because you were just like, oh, this looks like everything I want.
Yeah. Wow.
I heard you affirming what she was saying.
Yeah, but I think, so even as we jump a little deeper into this, and I think this is one of the things I wanted to kind of put out for consideration. Like, so when we talk about our type or our preference, I think my question is, do some of us have a type, or do we just have a cycle? And what I mean when I say that is that I think that there are certain things that you can get exposed to at a young age. And even if it's negative or it's toxic, it's just what you're familiar with.
Right.
And it becomes a part of a cycle. So even when somebody says, I like the rough neck, or even let's just say, you see a woman who is, suffers abuse or domestic violence, and her daughter grows up and kind of gravitates or finds that same guy. I don't know that that's her type.
Right.
It just may be a part of the cycle that she or he is unconsciously in.
Great point.
So even when we talk about like our preference, right? You know, a lot of times that's a very limiting kind of way of looking at the world, because preference is just your pre-reference. This is just this is kind of what I'm familiar with. That's just what I've seen. And so like even when we kind of talk about our type, I just think you have to be careful not to marry yourself to it, just because even like I am happily married, but like some of those things that have added value to my life, they weren't on my list.
Right.
I wouldn't say that's my type. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And but they're just certain things that you're used to, that you've seen growing up, that you've accepted as normal, even if some of those things are dysfunctional. So I just think that we have to be really, really careful to kind of make a distinction between like, okay, that's my type. Do I actually like that? Or is that just all I know? Or is that just all I've seen? Or is that just what I'm used to? So that even, I will hear a young lady on occasion, being here at the university campus will say something like, he's too nice. You see what I'm saying? And I will get completely infuriated with that. Because like, what do you mean? Like, what has become so normal that a prayerful, chivalrous guy who's all into you, like that's not attractive. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like even there's some young guys, I ain't going to lie. It's crazy. The porn culture is so crazy that there's some guys who see a spiritual woman as that's not sexy. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's just like they're part of a cycle. You see what I'm saying? That actually leads to our ruin and our demise. And I think that there's some of us that need to do some work to separate cycle from type, or just, these are my previous references for relationships, engagement, and it may not necessarily be what makes me happy or brings me joy, but it's what I know.
I think it's funny too, though, because I think sometimes people misunderstand what they consider something that they need. So we joked about the whole bad boy thing or the roughneck. Essentially what the too nice comment is. Yeah. And because I really had to dissect that, because I would hear that a lot. And contrary to popular belief, Hatchback the boyfriend, he very, can adapt in all spaces. And he has a rougher side to him if it's necessary to come out.
Right, yeah.
The where the rough thing or the too nice thing comes is that I think there is a genuine desire for a woman to feel protected in spaces. And so how we view a person is just like, if something goes down in the space that I'm in, is this the guy that's gonna like start taking people's heads off to protect me? Or is he gonna be the guy be like, wait a minute, you guys, I know, and you don't want that guy. You want the guy that's gonna like start be like, baby, I got you, and carrying you out while he's fighting people. Now that's what we want in our heads. Is that realistic? Maybe not. But that's where the desire comes, because we want to be protected. I dated a guy where we were someplace and something went down, and his immediate reaction was to hide behind me. And I was like, this ain't the dude. Right? He was the guy that you would take to the fancy dinners. He had a built-in thesaurus in his brain, and he could talk. But when something went down, this was in college, he hid behind me. And I remember the moment it happened, I was like, oh, no, Doc, like, what? I'm the person that you think is going to get us out of this? Later on, he couldn't understand why I was just like, this is not going to work. As opposed to a couple of years later, I was at a restaurant. I had a friend that was dating this guy that wasn't the greatest. And me being the mouth that I have, I said something a little off the cuff to him. And we were standing in line, and the guy, he backs me into this corner. I'll never forget this. PJ and I, my husband, we weren't even dating. We were just kind of like talking around the idea. He steps in front of me, doesn't say a word, but he stands with his back to me, and he backs the guy up just by looking at him. And then he turns around and looks at me. He said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna marry this guy." like I'm a bad guy. Because in that moment, I felt protected. And that is where that thing comes from. It's like, you're too nice, but because I want to know that you got my back in a situation where those go down.
I do think there's some socialization that needs to be. I agree with you on that. But I think there's a little more to it. But let me.
Well, I wanted because Sister Swann works with young girls. What are you seeing with young girls in terms of what we're talking about right now?
Well, what I see is the young girls that I've come encounter with, they are choosing based on what they think their friends would think of them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's not necessarily what they want or desire. It's, are my friends going to think I'm cool if I date this guy?
Yeah.
That's kind of where they are with it. And it's
is that kind of high school, college age?
High school, middle school.
Middle school,
Middle school, which I think that's just too young to even think about dating. That's just me. But you bring out a great point in terms of whether it's just what we know versus actually my preference. And I think, counseling is really a thing. And it should be, we think we should just seek counsel when things are wrong or when you need, help with a situation. But really to get to know who you are, sometimes you need somebody to help you through those different things and determine whether this is what I'm used to and whether it is my preference. And it's so important, like you have to just really be careful of who you have children with because they see that dynamic and that becomes what they know. And I think now that you brought that point out, I really think it's more just what we see and what we are accustomed to. And that's what forms what we think we desire.
And I just think the other thing too is just, I think when you talked about the list of qualities, I'm assuming they're not all physical.
Not at all.
And I just think I do think types or preferences become really destructive is if I allow my external type to matter more than who that person is. Now, again, I'm not trying to say looks or attraction it doesn't matter. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is I think that, if there's a person, they're just in your eyes, drop dead gorgeous, just suave, handsome, so on and so forth. But there are just obvious glaring defects of character. And you choose kind of the outside despite the obvious instability or lack of spirituality or just whatever it is. I do think that that's when it becomes truly problematic. And you've got to get to a place when we talk about modifying the type. All right, so let's just say you like tall, dark, and handsome. That's cool. But let's just say you meet somebody who is just like, man, inside, he is that dude. And you can kind of say, all right, he's maybe not as tall as I preferred, but man, his spiritual stature is tall. It's me saying I'm going to kind of prioritize kind of inner virtues. Let's just say, the woman you prefer, you're looking for, a certain type of woman, you know what I'm saying? But there's someone, maybe she's not your 10, but maybe she's a 9 physically, but spiritually, emotionally, in terms of intelligence, who she is, the value she's going to add to your life. I just think it's better to side with kind of the internal virtues of a person as opposed to just, relying exclusively or in an imbalanced way on the outside or the package or the container as opposed to the content.
And I think we're acculturated to do that, especially men.
Yep.
Because we tend to be, I know we're told we're more visual. I think that's really true. That
it's the truth.
Are more visual, and we're acculturated to really think about, well, what does she look like? Is her body banging? Does she have a pretty face? Blah, 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 blah. And we think about those superficial things first before we get to the character and the intellect.
And I think that's you have to have been raised really well. Or you have to have just been burned enough times to kind of say, I just need to start considering something else, And so it's not that, you just gonna close your eyes, you know what I'm saying? But it's just more I'm enlarging the breadth of my evaluation. I'm looking at more than just kind of how the person looks or, how they come across or you're just kind of getting beneath the surface a lot more, and kind of talking to those foundational things. And so I just think that that's where kind of preference or type can really work against you, especially if you just rely too much on the physical. I used to say all the time, just looks. If you're marrying for looks alone, it can be like an onion. The more layers you peel back, the more tears start coming from your eyes. The more layers you pull back, the more you're going to cry. So I just think that's where kind of preference or type can really get you in trouble.
Yeah.
I think that's very mature to want to go deeper past the physical.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes we don't do that because we ourselves are not that.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm not going to expect that deepness or that inner work from you because I'm not there. I haven't done my work. So I'm still I'm still those superficial things too. And so I'm just going to get with that same thing and be good with it.
Yeah.
Because I haven't done my work.
Hadn't done your work. Yeah.
So
because I can champion the fact that this, supermodel attractive guy wants to be with me means that I must be on that level. And so, because that's what people will think when we walk into a room and be like, oh my goodness, that's what we want. And so I think there is there's that moment where you say, it's good for my self-esteem to be with this attractive person.
because we do date on the level of our self-esteem.
Look at you. Listen, my God.
And let me tell you, there's been a time
Come on
that my self-esteem was really low.
Right.
And you can tell. And you can tell. You can tell.
But I read on, I was listening to a podcast and somebody, it was really great. Somebody's like, you don't marry your type, you marry your values. And because like you're the physical type, it goes up and down, but your values, that's what kind of gives you sustaining power throughout difficult seasons, which are inevitable to come upon everybody. And so I just think that, even as if you're in the dating season, right? I just think as opposed to just, height, weight, income, what are your values? Right. And I think when we talk about modifying your type, right? I just think certain things, there's probably a point in everybody's life where spirituality may not be a high value. But I think at a certain point, that needs to become a value. Maybe at a certain point, drive and passion for what they do. That may not be the thing when you're 18, 19, or 20, but at some point, that needs to kind of move up the value. Just how they engage with their family. We talked in another podcast about how you marry a network and just like, all right, what does that network look like? It needs to be a part of the rubric, you know what I'm saying, that I'm considering. And so I just think maturity kind of warrants you to, as Danita talked about looking at beneath the surface, maturity requires you to check the Carfax. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, let me just, because, like even the stuff we be saying, like, it's just how they look and da-da-da, but like, you need to look at that car and how many miles, how many accidents has been in, so forth, da-da-da. You just need to ask questions, validate, study, research, and, you come to some different conclusions.
So let me just jump in here, Danita, and say we're at a point now where we need to get into final thoughts.
Oh my gosh! See, listen, this went too fast. This is a whole. Too fast. We need a whole second half of this because I was going to actually say that the issue I have too is that you have a type. You keep dating your type, and it keeps turning out terribly.
Right.
Yeah.
Pause for a second.
Change the type.
Change it because it's what do they say? And this is one of those psychology things I'm probably going to misquote, but essentially like. To do the same thing over and over again and expect different results is insanity. So you keep dating the tall, light eyes, 6'3", and every time it has turned out to be terrible. Or you keep dating the Instagram worthy person that has all the right poses, and you've had sugar put in your gas tank 3 or 4 times.
Right. Yeah.
Stop. Like clearly
Yeah.
this is not working for you.
Right.
And maybe you need to step back from that. It's okay to say that on your list of things, I want to be attracted to that person physically. Because I think that's okay to say.
It is.
Yeah.
Nothing evil with that.
Without getting into like the 36, 24, 36 kind of requirement because it hasn't been working for you. And the reason why this conversation will resonate with somebody is because it has not worked for you. So sit down and figure out, is really the root of my having a type insecurity or self-esteem? And is that something that needs to be repaired before I can go back out into the dating game? Because if not, you're just going to keep repeating the same cycle.
And I love the old Commodore's brick house reference.
Listen,
with the measurements 36, 24,
again,
36,
aging everyone at the table.
It's all right. It's
That
all
has
right.
been
All the 25-year-olds are so turned off.
Right,
by
They're like, what 36, 24? What is that?
Yeah.
That's all right. There are people in our age groups who need
that are
this
dating, that need you. They
conversation.
know, yeah.
Sister Swann.
So types, okay, so they do evolve, okay, from high school, college, young adult, and beyond. As I have grown older, my type definitely has changed. And I think what I have done now is try to gauge what that type should be. And it really comes from the Bible. The fruits of the Spirit.
Okay. Ooh.
The fruits of the Spirit. Faithfulness.
Yes.
I mean,
Gentleness.
Come on now.
Gentleness.
Yeah.
Self-control. Peace. Love. Joy. If you have those things along with some attraction,
Yes.
we're good to go.
Listen, sis.
Well,
Come on now.
We're good to go.
That's a word right there, sis.
All right.
Yeah.
That's
But I
what
have to also have those things as well.
Yeah.
And so I think that
Right.
is where we go.
Good
with
word
that.
there.
Awesome.
If I could add to that, maybe just 1 Corinthians 13, what love is.
Yes.
Patient, kind,
Yes.
keeps no
Yes.
record, not proud. Because I think that, even a part of the whole dating thing is if you don't know what love is, how do you even know you're in love? You see what I'm saying? So I think that's critical. I would just say in closing too, I would just kind of go back to something we referenced earlier. Is it your type or is it your cycle? Because there's just some of us, I think, there's certain pathologies in our community where there's just some things that have happened with such regularity for so long that we've developed an appetite for some things that are just not healthy or good. There was probably a season where I kind of thought yelling and screaming was just, it's kind of what couples do, and so you would look at something like the Cosby Show where just normal conversation, oh, that's fake, that's TV, so on and so forth. But it's what you saw. You see what I'm saying? With a certain amount of regularity.
Right.
And it's funny because I remember when I started dating, Gianna is when I knew I was going to marry her, when I look at her, I saw peace. You know what I'm saying? Not chaos, not an argument. Not that we don't argue, but I'm just saying, but she is peace. Yeah. And so what I'm saying is, I just think that there are just certain things that we've just gotten so used to that we think it's what we want when it's just all that we know. And so I just think that sometimes we need to have a little bit more open-minded, be willing to kind of take a journey of exploration. And I would just kind of really, charge some of us that have kind of really been burned by some things to say, yo, man, maybe I can really be attracted to a deeply spiritual man, or especially men, like a woman who is virtuous. That doesn't mean that later on in life that other areas of life will go sagging, if you get my point.
Right.
No, that woman is going to add value to your life.
Right.
There are just certain things that you don't even know that you need. They're not on your list. But those are the things that are going to actually add value, growth, maturity, and completion to your life. And so we probably need to be just a tad more open-minded as we allow ourselves to be led by God.
Love it. What other podcasts are you going to hear a reference to the Commodores and Brick House?
Yeah.
And then it's followed by 1 Corinthians 13.
Come on.
There you go.
Right here.
Breathe.
Only
Right
here.
here.
This is Breathe.
Yeah.
This is
Only
it.
here.
This
Yeah.
is it. So God bless you as you continue to look for your type and consider modifying your type, so that it comports more with these eternal values that we've been talking about here. And you don't have to sacrifice or cut yourself short on good looks or what is attractive. There's a happy medium. You can find it, especially if you stop, pray, and breathe.
Breathe is produced by David Person for Breath of Life. Executive producer is Debleaire Snell, and sound engineer is Kirk Nugent. Audio episodes of Breathe can be found on Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcast platforms. For video episodes and extra content, check out the Breath of Life YouTube channel. Breath of Life is faith-based content, resources, and programs from a contemporary urban perspective for those looking for hope and guidance. We believe that every breath we take is a testimony that God is consistent, that He loves us, and has a plan for our lives.